You know, we often imagine that the great sages, mystics, and ancient teachers possessed some enormous secret, some grand cosmic password whispered only to the chosen few. But in truth their greatest secrets were rarely complicated at all. They were simple, almost embarrassingly simple. Yet we overlook them because we adore the dramatic, the mystical, the heavy. Human beings often miss the obvious precisely because it is obvious. Today I want to share with you one such secret, the small practice, one you can do each day for just 2 minutes, that was cherished by many great peoples across history. And if you truly understand it, not merely agree with it, but taste it, you might discover that this tiny act has the power to change the quality of your entire life. Let us explore this secret through 5 key ideas. Most people seek techniques, methods to fix the mind, correct the self, or wrestle life into order. But what wise men from many cultures understood is that peace is not produced by effort, it is revealed by returning. And returning, in this sense, is not a dramatic pilgrimage, not some grand inward voyage that requires special postures or esoteric chants. It is far simpler, almost deceptively so. It is a gentle turning of attention back to this moment as you are, without trying to sculpt yourself into a better version or an improved model. The sages knew that the more a person tries to force inner harmony, the more that harmony slips through their fingers like sand. Peace, after all, is not something you manufacture. It is something you notice. For 2 minutes simply return to this moment. Not the moment you think should be happening, not the one you hope will arrive once life aligns with your preferences, but the actual moment unfolding right now. This returning is a quiet recognition. Asterisk, I am here. Asterisk, nothing more is required. You need not tighten your mind into focus, nor discipline your breath into pattern. You do not have to make the mind silent or the heart calm. In fact, the harder you try to quiet the mind, the louder it becomes. The harder you push away thoughts, the more they cling. The mind does not respond well to force. It responds to space. It softens when you stop pulling and pushing. That is why you do not fight your thoughts during this returning. If a thought arises, fine. If 10 thoughts arise, also fine. They are simply thoughts, movements of the mind, no more personal than a breeze passing through a field. You do not need to resist them or regulate them. You only need to see them. And the moment you see them clearly, without trying to get rid of them, something extraordinary happens. They lose their heaviness. They no longer appear as obstacles blocking you from the present moment. Instead, they are simply part of the scenery of consciousness, passing shapes in the sky of awareness. Nor do you try to make yourself calm. Calmness, like sleep, arrives naturally once you stop demanding it. Trying to be calm is like telling water not to ripple. It only creates more disturbance. In this returning, you allow calmness to happen on its own, if it wants to. And if it doesn't, if your heart is racing or your mind is busy, that is perfectly all right. You are not returning to some ideal state. You are returning to this asterisk state. Whatever it is, however it feels, the moment becomes your teacher, not your enemy. As you sit in this returning, you may notice something subtle beneath the noise. Beneath the thoughts, beneath the emotions, beneath the swirl of expectations and memories, there is a presence that has been here all along. A simple awareness, unbothered and unchanged by whatever is occurring. This presence does not grow or shrink according to your mood. It does not vanish when you are anxious or reappear when you are peaceful. It is stable, silent, spacious. It is the you that exists before the idea of you, and by merely returning, you rediscover it. When you stop trying to become anything, more spiritual, more disciplined, more enlightened, you rediscover what you already are. The great secret is not improvement, it is remembering. Improvement implies deficiency, remembering implies completeness. This daily 2-minute returning is not a quest for perfection, but a reunion with your natural state, the state that existed before you learned to chase, correct, or struggle. And the more you return, the more you realize that the peace you sought through effort was here the entire time, waiting patiently for you to notice it. We are always adjusting, correcting, optimizing, yet rarely do we simply sit with ourselves as we are. Modern life has conditioned us to believe that our worth is measured by our ability to tweak, refine, and improve something at every moment. Even when we attempt to rest, a part of the mind whispers suggestions about how to breathe better, relax better, meditate better. It is as though we have become perpetual editors of our own existence, constantly rewriting ourselves in search of an elusive state of perfection. And yet, in this endless quest to improve the self, we forget the astonishing truth that much of our suffering comes not from what is happening, but from the relentless effort to rearrange what is happening. For 2 minutes, do nothing, absolutely nothing. This may sound trivial, even absurd, but for a mind accustomed to perpetual motion, doing nothing is one of the most radical acts imaginable. To do nothing is to abandon, even momentarily, the urge to adjust your posture, refine your breath, correct your thoughts, or manipulate your emotional landscape. You simply sit, not as a project to be worked on, but as a presence to be experienced. It is a return to the simplicity that existed before you built your life around tasks, goals, and improvement. Just sit, breathe naturally, and allow every sensation, every thought, every emotion to pass through you like clouds drifting across an empty sky. There is no need to chase the pleasant sensations or push away the uncomfortable ones. They are all simply movements of life within you, impermanent, shifting, and inherently harmless when left to flow freely. Thoughts will come, that is their nature. Emotions will rise, that is their rhythm. But you are not required to manage them. In this practice, you grant them the freedom to appear and disappear without interference, as though you were watching distant waves rolling in and dissolving on a shore that is never disturbed. This simple act is revolutionary because it interrupts the constant struggle to fix life. When you stop trying to improve your inner experience, you dismantle the machinery of resistance that keeps the mind in turmoil. Doing nothing gives you a rare glimpse of what the mind is like without pressure. You begin to see that much of your inner tension comes from the effort of resisting certain experiences and grasping desperately at others. When this effort drops away even briefly, the mind begins to unwind itself like a rope that has been tightly coiled for too long. And paradoxically, it is when we stop struggling that clarity begins to appear. Clarity is not something you manufacture through effort. It is something that reveals itself when effort dissolves. The moment you stop trying to rearrange your experience, the noise settles of its own accord. Thoughts become less sticky, emotions less overwhelming. You start to perceive subtle truths about yourself not through analysis, but through direct experience. You discover that beneath the turbulence of everyday life, there is a quietness that does not depend on circumstances. It is always present, but rarely noticed, because we are too busy trying to improve the moment to actually inhabit it. Great peoples, from monks to poets, used this not as an escape, but as a homecoming. They understood that doing nothing is not abandonment of responsibility, but a return to the natural intelligence of being. In those 2 minutes of stillness, you are not avoiding life. You are meeting it without pretense, without judgment, without the usual distortions created by the mind's compulsive adjustments. You sit with yourself the way you might sit with a dear friend, without trying to change them, without expecting anything from them, simply allowing their presence to be enough. And in that quiet companionship with your own being, something ancient and essential awakens. You remember what it feels like to exist without striving, to simply be, and to discover that this is more than enough. Most of us live as though our thoughts are a continuous, unbroken stream, an unstoppable river carrying us from worry to memory to anticipation without a moment's rest. We move through the day assuming this inner chatter is solid, constant, almost like a background engine running our lives. But in truth, the mind is not a ceaseless roar. It is more like a passing melody, a note here, a space there, a rhythm shaped as much by silence as by sound. The trouble is not that we think, but that we have forgotten to hear the silence in between. And these small, nearly invisible pauses, the tiny spaces between thought, are where the ancient teachers found something profoundly illuminating. When you stop for 2 minutes and turn inward without trying to control the mind, you begin to notice something subtle. A thought rises, perhaps a memory or a concern. Then it fades, if only slightly, and in that fading there is a brief open moment, a gap. Maybe it lasts a fraction of a second, maybe a little longer, but it is there, and it is spacious. Another thought begins to form, a word or an image, but before it becomes complete, there is again a moment of openness. These gaps are like doorways into the quiet nature of your own awareness. Most people miss them because they are busy chasing the content of their thinking. We're trained to react to every mental movement, as if each thought were an urgent message requiring immediate attention. But when you do nothing for 2 minutes, when you simply watch the mind without leaning toward or away from anything, you become sensitive to the mind's natural rhythm, and you realize that the thoughts are only half the story. The other half is the silence that holds them, the quiet background against which every mental event appears. It is in these quiet spaces that you discover something remarkable. Awareness itself does not come and go. Thoughts arise and dissolve, but the knowing of them remains steady. This awareness is like the sky, vast, open, unchanging, while the thoughts and emotions are like clouds drifting through. Some are dark and heavy, others light and fleeting, but none of them disturb the sky. The moment you glimpse this, even briefly, you feel a softening inside, a release of tension you may not have realized you were holding. Noticing the space between thoughts is not an escape from thinking, nor is it an attempt to force the mind into silence. In fact, the attempt to create silence is one of the quickest ways to disturb it. Rather, this is a recognition of a silence that is already there, always there, waiting behind every mental movement. You do not have to produce it, you only need to notice it. The ancient masters understood that the mind's natural state is not noise, but openness. The noise only feels constant because we cling to it. As these spaces become more familiar, your relationship with your thoughts begins to change. Instead of being swept away by them as if caught in a current, you begin to see them as they are, momentary expressions of the mind. You no longer mistake them for commands, obligations, or threats. You can watch a fearful thought rise without becoming fearful. You can watch a sad thought appear without sinking into sorrow. Thoughts lose their power to push and pull you because you recognize that they are not you. They are simply happening within you. And gradually, almost effortlessly, you discover that clarity emerges not from thinking harder, but from allowing space around your thoughts. Just as a musician relies on pauses to give shape to music, awareness relies on silence to give depth to understanding. In those 2 minutes of simply noticing, you find yourself not controlling the mind, but resting in the vastness that holds it. Many people move through life with the subtle belief that the body is a machine, a set of parts that must be controlled, calibrated, and commanded. We treat it as though it were something we operate rather than something we are. But the ancient teachers, the mystics, the poets, and even the great scientists understood something far more fluid. The body is not a mechanism but a movement. It is not a rigid structure but a wave, forever rising, falling, swelling, dissolving, shifting with the tides of sensation and emotion. To reconnect with this truth is to rediscover a sense of aliveness that modern life often dulls. For 2 minutes, simply feel your body as it is, without trying to adjust it. Notice how the breath moves on its own, without your instruction. Notice how the chest expands and softens, how the belly rises and falls, how the air enters and leaves as effortlessly as wind drifting through an open window. You are not the one pumping the lungs or choreographing the dance of oxygen and blood. Life is doing that. Life has been doing that long before you ever tried to manage or control it. The body is more like a wave in the ocean than a machine in a factory. No wave is separate from the sea. It is simply the ocean expressing itself in a particular form for a brief moment. In the same way, your body is the universe expressing itself as you, a temporary pattern of energy, movement, and sensation. If you can sense this even a little, the tension you habitually carry begins to loosen. You stop gripping the body as though it were something holding you back, and instead you experience it as something participating with you, flowing with you. When you feel the body in this way, you begin to notice subtle currents of sensation you would normally overlook. There is the warmth of the hands, the weight of the feet, the gentle pulse beneath the skin. There is the quiet hum of aliveness in the fingertips, the soft ripple of energy along the spine. None of these sensations are static. They are all in motion, shifting like light on water, and you do not need to analyze them or give them meaning. You only notice them with the same openness you might bring to watching waves roll in and out. This simple attention to the body without control, without restraint, without correction, creates a profound shift. You begin to recognize that the body is not your adversary. It is not something to conquer or discipline. It is your first home, your oldest companion, the form through which the universe experiences itself in this fleeting moment. Instead of tightening around it, you allow it to be as it is, fluid, rhythmic, alive. If you listen closely, you might even sense that your emotions also move like waves. Anxiety is a quick ripple that rises sharply and fades. Sadness is a slower swell that deepens and eventually dissolves. Joy comes as a light, shimmering crest. None of these states are permanent. They change in intensity, shape, and texture, just like waves responding to the moon, the wind, or the distant tides. And when you stop resisting them, when you simply feel their movement without bracing against it, they pass through you far more gently. This is why the great teachers understood the body as a gateway rather than an obstacle. By feeling the body as a wave, you reconnect to your inherent, belonging to the natural world. You are not an isolated mind trapped inside a physical shell. You are part of the same vast process that moves oceans, stirs winds, and ignites stars. For 2 minutes each day, to feel this not as an idea, but as a direct living sensation, is to remember something ancient within yourself, something you may have forgotten but never truly lost. Once you begin to sense the body as a wave rather than a machine, a deeper understanding begins to surface, one that dissolves the illusion of separateness. For 2 minutes, if you sit quietly and feel the breath entering and leaving the body, you may notice something subtle but profound. The air you breathe is not yours. It does not belong to you in any personal way. The breath is part of a vast cycle that began long before you and will continue long after. It was exhaled by trees, carried by winds, shaped by mountains, warmed by sunlight. When you inhale, you are taking in the same air shared by countless beings across time. And when you exhale, you return it to the world. In this simple exchange, the boundary between you and everything else becomes softer, less distinct. The sages understood that the feeling of being a separate self, sealed off from the world, isolated behind the eyes, is not our natural state, but a learned habit of perception. We spend so much time identifying with the chatter of the mind, with our stories, our roles, our histories, that we forget the wider truth. We are part of a single, continuous process. Just as a wave cannot be separated from the sea, you cannot be separated from the universe that brought you forth. You are an expression, a momentary pattern, a living gesture within something immeasurably larger. When you sit for 2 minutes each day and simply feel your existence without forcing it, a quiet recognition begins to emerge. The energy in your body, the warmth in your chest, the pulse in your veins, all of it comes from the same source that fuels stars and binds galaxies. Your heartbeat is powered by nutrients that came from the soil, the rain, the sun. Your thoughts are shaped by language you did not invent, ideas passed down through generations, memories influenced by countless interactions. Nothing about you is isolated. Everything that you experience as yourself is intimately woven into the fabric of everything else. This recognition is not meant to be believed. It is meant to be felt, and it is felt most clearly in stillness, when the usual noise of self-concern grows quiet enough for you to sense the vastness beneath it. When you stop trying to control the moment, you begin to perceive the moment as part of a much larger, more intricate dance. The movement of your breath, the rhythm of your thoughts, even the flow of your emotions, these are not personal failures or triumphs. They are simply expressions of life moving through you. When ancient teachers spoke of unity, oneness, or interconnectedness, they were not describing a mystical concept. They were pointing to something directly observable in your own experience. You can feel it in the way your body responds to the world around you, the way warmth from the sun softens your muscles, the way the sound of wind quiets the mind, the way the presence of another person can shift your internal landscape. You are continuously shaped by the world, just as the world is subtly shaped by you. To sense this is to let go, even momentarily, of the heavy burden of being a separate self struggling against life. You begin to understand that you are not required to control everything, because you are not outside of anything. You are within the flow, part of the flow, moved by the flow. The universe is not something you navigate, it is something you are. And when you feel this truth, even for 2 minutes, something loosens inside, a softness arises. The walls of the self become more transparent, and you can breathe more freely, not as an isolated individual, but as a moment of the universe breathing itself.